It's all about beets today in the sartorial kitchen. Kicking things off, it is a beet green salad tossed in a raspberry vinaigrette. Then I'm making some fried beet chips, tossed in garlic salt and Italian seasoning. And last but not least, a classic red velvet cake with cream cheese icing. So why don't you pull up a chair and dine with me?
Welcome back, everybody. Today is all about beets. I have just picked some of the last beets out of my garden for the season. My garden has been very fruitful this year, and I've gotten a lot of things out of it. So I want the tops because I am making a salad. It's going to be a fresh, kind of spring salad. I know it's kind of an odd time of year for that. But I want to show the versatility of beets. A lot of people just think of beets like pickled beets. There are so many ways to use beets, and the tops is one of them. So I'm separating the leaves from the stems here. I actually want the stems as well. I'm just going to turn around the leaves here. I thought the stems would add a nice little bit of texture. I'm just going to do a small dice on these. And set those aside. And then the leaves, I'm just going to break up a little bit into pieces so it's easier to eat. And I've already rinsed all of this in the sink. Okay, that is the last of our leaves. Now we're going to move on to our dressing. I'm making a raspberry vinaigrette. I'm going to show you a really easy recipe for raspberry vinaigrette. First, we need our vinegar. I've got some red wine vinegar here. I'm going to do about a couple tablespoons of that. To that, I also need some oil here, just some extra virgin olive oil. About equal parts. And to make it raspberry, I've got some homemade raspberry jam here out of the garden. And also I'm going to take about a tablespoon of that, not quite as much. This is going to add some nice tartness and some sweetness. I love dressings that have a lot of different kind of flavors going on. And then as always, a little salt and pepper to round everything out. And grab my little handy dandy whisk. And basically we're just going to incorporate that jam with the oil and the vinegar. Great thing about the vinegar, the jam, is it's going to emulsify everything because it's already kind of thickened. So everything just comes together nicely. You can see that beautiful color too, which is going to go great with the beet greens. Alright, now I'm going to leave the leaves aside, but I am going to throw in my stems first because I want them to go ahead and kind of break down a little bit. I don't want them to get too soft, but I do want them to get a little tender because they are kind of fibrous. And just kind of stir that in. And then I've got a few other things here. I've got some little package of cran raisins here. That's going to add some more tartness. It's going to incorporate well with the dressing. And then for some more texture here, I've got a mixture of seeds here, sunflower and pumpkin seeds. I just want to, a couple little handfuls of that and incorporate that in. And some mandarin oranges. This is just going to be a bright and colorful salad full of flavor. Nice and sweet. we drain all of the liquid. If you miss a little, that's okay, because it'll just flavor our dressing, but I don't want to thin it out too much. And then we're just going to dump that right in. Continuing to stir. Now, if you wanted to, you could almost leave it just like this, and you'd have a sort of different take on like a fruit salad, which I've done before too. But I want it to show off the beet greens, so I'm going to leave that just like that. And let's compose the salad. So I know a lot of times I go ahead and throw my leaves and everything in and toss it up, but I thought this time I would do more of a composed salad. So I just want to kind of lay the leaves out on the plate. So I'm going to start with one layer here. Get rid of this guy. And then we'll take our spoon and we'll come in here and just get some of those goodies and just drizzle them on top. Make sure we get some of that dressing. And then we'll come in with another layer here, just like that. And then again we come in, plop some of those goodies on top, and then get some of our dressing here. I don't want too much dressing, I want all the ingredients to kind of stand up for themselves. Now does that not look delicious or what? Nice and fresh and just full of flavor. I'm just going to come in here and get a nice leaf. I want to make sure I get everything on here. I want the seeds. Bon appetit. I don't know if you can hear it. Immediately, you're getting the crunch, the leaves, and the stems. Some nice texture of the seeds. So many textures going on in here. The chewiness of the cran raisins. And then you get the sweetness of the dressing with the oranges, and everything's so citrusy and bright and tart. Just so many things going on here. Okay, so I'm going to finish up my salad, and then we're going to move on to my next dish. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. So we had our salad. Now I'm moving on to some beet chips, and it's just like it sounds. It's going to be like potato chips, but with beets. So beets, they are basically a root vegetable. So they have some of the similar properties of like a potato. There's some starchiness. They also have a nice kind of earthy flavor, which I think is going to play nicely when we fry it up. And I'm just working on some of these beets here, shaving them up, and then we're going to slice them on my mandolin to get them nice and thin, and so they fry up nice and crisp. And we'll be making a little kind of seasoning to dust them with that they come out. It's going to be so. Alright guys, just finishing up with my beets here. Now you're probably wondering why I'm wearing gloves. So here's the deal. Beets are very colorful and very juicy, and they stain. You see these red hands? And it's hard to wash off your hands, but if you have the gloves, then you're good to go. Okay, so I've got my beets here. About 4 medium-sized beets. Okay, now, alright, so that is my beets. It's about 4 medium-sized beets. Now I'm going to throw them on this paper towel here. Here's the thing with beets, like I said, they're very juicy. I don't want to throw these in the oil as is, because they will just, all the oil will just whoosh. It'll get everywhere. No good. So I'm going to take a towel here. I'm just going to press really firmly here down on these beets. Try and get them as dry as I can. It's also going to help them get crispier in our oil if I let them get nice and dry. Yeah, look at that. Alright, I think we are ready for the fryer. Alright, I'm just going to slowly drop this into my oil. Again, I don't want splashing, so I'm just going to slowly, a couple at a time. And I'm just using a skillet here. I've got about a cup of oil. I just want to do like a nice shallow fry on this. And you'll know they're ready. They'll float to the top and they're going to change color. They're going to get kind of a bright, kind of lighter reddish color. And I just like to move them around with my little spider here so they don't crowd and stick together. And then I've just got a few more here. I'm going to go ahead and throw them in. Alright, I'm going to turn off the oil on this. These look pretty good. Look at that. You got that nice golden color on there. I'm just going to take my spider and scoop these out of here. Alright, just a few more here. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Alright, move that away. Now while these are good and hot, I want to go ahead and season them. So I've got some garlic salt here. Just a nice generous sprinkling of the garlic salt. And just a hint of Italian seasoning. And just toss that together. While it's good and hot, and that oil, that's going to help all of our seasonings cling to the chips. And you can smell that. Ooh, it's so fragrant. And there we have it. Beet chips. Definitely gonna have to give these a taste. You hear that crunch? So the beets, they have a kind of earthiness to them. Just a slight sweetness. They do really well to the frying here. And then you get the garlic and the salt help bring out the natural sweetness of the beets. That's why I like that. And then the Italian seasoning just kind of plays to that kind of earthy, savory note. So, so good. Addictive. And much better for you than potatoes. So, I'm going to clean up here. And we will move on to my dessert. Welcome back, everybody. Last but not least, it is dessert time, and I am making a classic red velvet cake. Now, you're probably thinking, what does beets have to do with red velvet cake? Well, I'm about to tell you. So, there are two things that make red velvet cake distinct from other cakes. That is vinegar and, of course, the red food coloring. So I figured, why not use some pickling liquid from my pickled beets and kill two birds with one stone. You get the color from the beet, you get that natural kind of red color instead of using the food coloring, and then you get the vinegar as well. So that is exactly what I'm doing today. So I'm starting with my dry ingredients as always. I like to sift my dry ingredients, so that is 2 2/3 cup flour to get us started. Now another thing about red velvet cake is the chocolatey flavor. So I've also got some cocoa powder here. And we're going to do 2 hefty tablespoons of the cocoa powder. I want this to have lots of nice, rich chocolate flavor. This is baking cocoa and you can just already smell it. Oh, so flavorful. Okay, we're going to need about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's pretty good. And then, of course, a teaspoon of baking soda. Perfect. Now let's sift those dry ingredients. Get all that chocolate out of there. Beautiful. And now we are ready for the wet ingredients. I'm going to start with my sugar. I need a cup and 3/4. Beautiful. I'm going to leave that there for a second. 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I like to use the good vanilla. And this cap is about a teaspoon. Beautiful. This is going to be really flavorful. The vanilla is really going to bring out the flavor of that chocolate. Now, I also need 3 eggs. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to get a paper towel here for the shells. And I'm just going to crack the eggs right into my cup here so I can watch for eggshells. I always like to do my eggs separate. We don't want eggshell in our cake. That would not be good. And that's going to go right in. Beautiful. A cup of oil. This is going to make the cake nice and moist. And a cup of milk. Nice. And then lastly, about half a stick or a half cup of softened or room temperature butter, melted butter, right in there. And we are ready to whisk this baby up. Alright, I'm just going to come in here with my whisk. I like to break up the yolks of those eggs first. And just kind of come down. Smash our wet ingredients into the dry. And just almost kind of like you're kneading it. I don't want to overwork the flour. That's going to defeat the purpose of all the things we've got in here to make this cake nice and moist and fluffy when you overwork that gluten. And then we're just going to come in here and give it a nice little stir. Looks like a really good fudgy chocolate cake batter. And if you did it right now, it would be, but we're doing red velvet, so I do need one more ingredient. And that is the pickling liquid. So I've got a jar of my pickled beets right here. This is last year's crop. And you can see that liquid. It's nice. It has that really nice, rich, dark red color. I'm just going to pour it. I need 2 tablespoons of this. And you can just see that dark, it's almost like a wine color. I just need about 2 tablespoons of that. Yeah, so you can see this is turning that nice reddish color. And the other thing about the vinegar, if you've ever done volcanoes in science class, you know that vinegar and baking soda create a little whoosh effect. And we have baking soda in here instead of baking powder. So our cake is going to really rise and just get nice and fluffy. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to throw this in the oven. Okay, I think we're good. So I've got 2 round cake pans here. I have already pre-greased them, and I have preheated my oven to 350 degrees. So I'm just going to evenly distribute my batter here. Get a little bit in one, and then the rest in here. And use your whisk to get all that batter out of here. I don't want to leave any batter in the bowl. I want it all in my cake. I just like to tap down the cake a little bit to remove any air bubbles. And they're going to go right into my oven. I'm going to put them on the middle shelf. I don't want them to get too dark on top. And these are just going to bake for about 30 to 35 minutes. And then when they come out, we'll set them to cool and work on our frosting. Alright, time to pour our cakes out of the oven. I've got a rack here. I'm going to let these cool. One, that's going to make them easier to pull out of the pan, and two, we don't want to put our frosting on a hot cake or it's just going to melt everywhere. So I'm just going to let these go here. I like to elevate them so the heat can escape from underneath as well and it cools evenly all over. And while that happens, we are going to work on our sauce. So I've got some cream cheese here. So I've got a block of cream cheese here. This I have left sitting out so it gets nice and soft. Just peel this open and let it fall right in. Beautiful. To that, I need half a stick of room temperature or softened butter, not melted, but softened. A teaspoon of vanilla extract, just to give it some extra flavor. And then some powdered sugar. Now I like to go in stages with my powdered sugar. And just add a little bit at a time. So I'm going to grab a spoon here. And I'm just going to start with a couple tablespoons. And we'll mix that up, and then you can add as you go. If you get too much and it's clumpy, then you're done for because you don't have the liquid to kind of thin it out. So I like to go in stages. Alright, and then we're just going to come here on a low setting. I like to go in a low setting, otherwise you're going to have powdered sugar everywhere, you're going to be wearing it. No fun. So I'm just going to come in here. And then once you incorporate some of that powdered sugar, then you can kind of mix it up a little higher just to kind of incorporate everything. For my cake. And these should just pop right out. And of course, the best part is licking the beater. So good. I love you get just a little bit of sweetness from the powdered sugar. But you can get that tang of the cream cheese. And the vanilla just kind of wakes up all those flavors. Now we're ready to decorate. Alright guys, time to unmold these babies. Nice. Alright, and for the other guy here, and I just like to run my spatula around the sides, make sure it's nice and loose. That's exactly why we grease the pan. The last thing you want is to go to all that trouble making a cake and then have it stick. Okay, and the next one here. Beautiful. I'm just stack that right on top. Now we are ready to frost. Okay, so I'm gonna lift this guy back up and set him over here for now. And we're gonna start on the bottom layer. And I'm just gonna dollop a nice, generous helping of the icing. And we're just doing a crumb coat, so you don't have to get fancy here. I'm just taking my spatula, and I like to go edge to edge. Help keep the layers moist, and then the other half right on top. Perfect. Okay, now for the rest of our icing. Now for the rest of our frosting. Again, right on top. And I like to go in the middle. See, and then you can just kind of like run the spatula down the sides. And again, I want this to kind of look rustic, so we're just doing a crumb coat here. The thing with store-bought cakes, sometimes they taste good, but they always have that look like you know it came from a store. So a lot of times when I'm baking, I like to do a more rustic approach. And it's just for us here, so we're not impressing anybody. Just come around the sides, and I just like to kind of smooth it out. Make sure we get a nice coating all the way around. I always like to make sure I have enough to at least do a crumb coating before I indulge with my icing. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. There's one more thing I want to do. So one of our cakes stuck just a little bit, so I thought it would be fun to take some of these crumbs instead of just throwing them away. And we can kind of sprinkle them around the border here, just to kind of give it a little color, a little extra flavor, a little extra texture here. These nice little darker bits in the corners of the pan. And there we have it. Red velvet cake. Now I hate to cut into this since it's so beautifully put together, but I'm not going to do that to you guys. I am going to have me just a little slice. Plus I want you to be able to see the inside. Okay, I'm just going to come in here. You can use the spatula, why not? I'll make more dishes. And I'm just cutting a little itty bitty wedge here. I am trying to watch my weight after all. Oh, and just look at this. You get that little layer there in the middle. That nice icing. And you got a little bit of reddish color. What I like, again, about using the beet juice, this looks rustic, this looks homemade. When you buy it from the store, it's that bright red. You just know that thing is full of preservatives and colors. This is colored from the garden, so that makes it good for you, right? Now let's give it a taste, of course. Like I said, nice and moist, firm. You should be able to push on the sponge and it pushes back. And then you get the tanginess of the cream cheese. Just enough cocoa that you know it's there. Absolutely delicious, ladies and gentlemen. So that is beets. I thank you for joining me in the kitchen as always. Like and subscribe, hit me up in the comment section, and until next time.